Hey everyone, Mike Rossell, engineer for Communities live show. I've got quite an interesting guest today, Chris Martin. He is EOD specialist to water tank diver with New Water Enterprises, and he's helping change and grow different water and sewer providers in Colorado. Excuse me, Oklahoma and Texas. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Hey, how's it going, Mike? Hey, don't worry, I'm in Colorado as well. We don't have as big of a footprint in Colorado, but we're breaking into it.
So, all right, the first question I have is, I wrote EOD to H2O Hero. I just thought it sounded really fun. How did you how did you get there to make that transition?
Right? All right, it's a big step. It's a big leap. The most common story that you hear from veterans when they get out is, man, what am I going to do in the civilian world? The military only taught me how to do one or two things, right? And that was kind of the situation that we were in. Military taught me how to do two things: shoot a gun and dive. And when I first got out, I went and actually worked for a private military company and did that for a little more. And I was watching my two daughters grow up on a computer screen. And I was like, I got to find something to bring me back home. And I was like, well, I guess I'm going to diving. And I had heard about this new concept where diving companies were actually diving inside of water towers. And I was like, well, there's no better way to keep my adrenaline rush up than to climb 200 feet in the air and to dive in somebody's water tank, right? So that's where it all started. That's how I kind of got back into the diving industry and kind of hit the civilian side of it. And it's just been an uphill battle every step of the way, and I've loved every rung of that ladder. But that's how I transitioned out of the military. And you know, for most of us, it really doesn't happen that easily. And finding that niche that you can get back into in the civilian world doesn't happen quite so often for a lot of us veterans. But it just happened to go hand in hand with what I was doing. Diving and diving.
Well, yeah, I got to think, man, you just hear so many stories like they don't know what they're gonna do. And the fact you put those two together, that's pretty unique. I could not dream of that.
It was still a brand new concept, really. I think that so when I started in 2012, tank diving had only been around for about 10 years, maybe maximum, to where divers were diving. That was in tanks, and that was from a company called IDS, International Diving Services. It was actually here in Texas. They were the first company to ever start potable diving, and they got bought out years and years ago by another company called Texas Tank, and they're up in the East Texas area. And really, it was when I met that owner of that company, and I was like, well, man, if you're doing it, why can't I do it? And if you're
Right.
cornering the market right now, then there's a lot of opportunity out there. And since I've gotten into the industry, there's probably about 7 or 8 companies nationwide that do it, that do potable tank diving. Now there's some diving companies that will do it, um, but it's not their main specialty. So it's more of a collateral duty for them. And you really want to stick with a company that specializes in tank diving because of all the different parts of a tank and exactly what you're looking at, right? You can pay somebody to go dive a tank and they'll take a couple of pictures, maybe give you a video, but they don't know what they're looking at any more than the guy on the ground that's never been in the tank knows what he's looking at. So it's really beneficial to find somebody that knows exactly what they're doing. And we've been in the industry for 11 years now.
So one of the things I found so fascinating about how you guys inspect tanks and provide that was you've kind of started to standardize the process, one, and two, you kind of hit on it there a little bit. It's the specificity of that process, like giving the owner something that they're actually able to go use, take to an engineer that's a little more so that they can get funding too, and it might have some costs associated with it. Can you talk a little bit about what that just what's so unique
Yeah.
about that?
So yeah, that's really our secret sauce, Mike, is let's say that you go with, and we're the only company out here that does this. And it's because not only do I own a company that specializes in tank services, maintenance, and inspections, but I also own 6 different water supplies myself. So I understand it from both sides of the table. I know what they want and what they're willing to pay for. And if you go and call any other company out there and say, hey, give me a tank inspection, they're going to look at the state required inspection report and they're going to say, I need to give you this amount of information and this is what I'm going to give you because that's what you're going to pay me for. Well, the thing is when they get that report it's just a piece of paper to them and to the company that did it. You can't really, it's not actionable information. Okay. So
Yeah.
let's say that tank is in bad condition and they need to go get it rehabbed. Well, there's a funding process that's involved with that. There's planning and design. There's engineering services that go along with that. There's administrative services that go along with that. And there's a whole process before that tank can ever be rehabbed. And we thought, well, what if we could knock out as much of that middleman work as possible to where when you get our report, you can actually do something with the report. And it saves you more money than it costs. Okay, that was my end goal. How can I charge somebody but actually save them more money than they're going to pay me for this service? And that's what we did. So whenever you look at our inspection report, you get so much information such as rust ratings per individual section of the tank, per individual appendage of the tank. So not only do we tell you how much surface area is covered in corrosion, we also tell you how thick your coating is on that tank, how thick the substrate is underneath the coating. And if you let me know when the last time that tank was coated, I can tell you how much coating you're losing per year. And I can tell you how many years you have left until you've reached the critical stage to where that coating will no longer be protecting that tank, and you will need to blast that tank instead of maybe just power wash it and recoat the external surface. So I can take our inspection report and I can say, hey, listen, if you just stick with us for a little while longer, I can save you maybe $40,000, $100,000 on the outside of that tank that nobody else is going to offer you. And plus, once you get my inspection report, you can give it straight to your engineer who can take everything we have in that report and write your engineering report that you're going to need for that project without having to step foot on site and do additional work. So it may take away from somebody like you, Mike, and I do apologize for that.
Right.
But in the end run, for the client, it's all about the client, and it saves them the most amount of time and resources and effort that's required on their behalf to actually get the project done start to finish.
Yeah, I mean, to send it could be $1,000 just to send just that engineer out there. I'm not sure what your reports are running, but if he's spending that $1,000 just writing the report instead of going to the site, it's probably doubly positive.
Agreed. And that's what in our inspection reports are less than $1,000, and you get all the information.
Wow. Okay. So one of the things you had mentioned, you have a pretty comprehensive database that you're able to look at, pull lots of contractor data in there about the different parts of the tank to help. Does that help give them a number, an estimate? Does that report come with some of that in the back end?
Yeah. So one of the softwares that we use, and let me back up. So one of the pages in our inspection report is called a recommendations page. And what it does is it has a line item per line item of every hit or every issue that we see, or even a concern that we see that needs to be dealt with on that tank within the next 5 to 7 years. So unlike a lot of the companies out there, when I give you an inspection report that has a bunch of work that needs to be done on it, I'm not calling you and begging you, hey, let me do that work. Do we offer the services? Absolutely. But what differentiates us from every other company is we give you a time frame in which that should be addressed. Hey, you need to clean your tank within the next 1 to 2 years. Okay. And why that is. Why does the sediment sitting on the floor plates actually hurt you more than you know, right? It's not only increasing your chemical dosage, but it's also eating away the coating and causing pitting in the metal, right? Which if you have that sediment sitting on the floor plates too long and you go to rehab that tank, you might need a whole new floor put in your tank, to where if you just clean that every 5 years, you could have stopped from having to replace the bottom of your tank for $27,000 on a standard standpipe,
Wow.
So just a little bit of information like that. But let's say, hey, you do need a rehab. Let's say you need to go ahead and you need to, recoat the inside of that tank because your coating's failed and you're just building up corrosion. We'll tell you about how long you have to where that needs to be done, so you can actually budget for those costs. And we're not just throwing a blanket number out there. Hey, this is what we would charge you to do it, so this is what you need to bid. We use the same software that a lot of engineering companies use, which is called Xactimate. And what that does is it takes the market research of that area, of the location of that client, and says, hey, materials cost this much. labor costs this much on average for those project types. And with that information, we can show you what the line item should be for that project to go out for bid. So when you accept bids for that project, including our bid, we may not always be the lowest. If we got to mobilize, to Colorado from Texas, our mobilization costs might put us out of the run for that project. But what we give you is a line item per line item cost, so that when you do bid the project, you know that if somebody's trying to take advantage of you or if somebody's trying to lowball you. And that's exactly what's happened. And that's the biggest piece of feedback that we've received from our inspection reports when they do go out for project is, how can you be so much lower? And my number one answer for that is, are you bidding with a local company, or are you bidding with a company that does tank work? And that's usually the biggest difference.
Well, yeah, you had mentioned one time you told me about this the sandblasting or the painting example and tarping everything depending on your location. Is that one of those kind of instances you're talking about?
Yeah. So when I first got really starting to get the information for the recommendations page, and starting to add those line items in there, before I used Xactimate, I used to call subcontractors and say, hey, what would you charge me to do this work, so that I could start bidding work that way? Well, this one guy in Oklahoma City, I won't give the name, but in Oklahoma City, I asked him what he would charge me just to blast the inside of a water tower. And it was a standpipe, 12-foot diameter, 70-foot tall. Just the blasting, not the recoating, just the blasting of the inside of that tank was more than the entire cost of the project to blast, recoat the inside and the outside, and fall protection
Oh, wow.
and the vent. And I was like, are you serious? And he was like, well, it's working at height, so there's hazard duty pay. And I was like, I had already received 3 other bids from actual tank companies that I was just going to sub the project out to. And they were all 3 lower in the entire project cost. And this one local contractor was going to be just to blast the inside. And so that was one instance. And I was like, okay, maybe this is just a one-off. So we got using the Xactimate. We started getting our numbers dialed into what everybody else was charging. And I can tell you, if I'm bidding against a company, if you tell me the company, I know exactly what they're going to bid. I've looked at enough of their bid projects. I've looked at enough of
Wow.
their line items to know that I can go in and bid a project just a couple dollars less than these other companies, because that's how exact I've gotten this down to a
Spot
science.
on, yeah.
And I got a call from a client the other day that was like, hey, we'd like to use you, but we want to know why you're so much cheaper. And so the first question I asked him is, are you using a tank company, or are you using a local contractor? Well, we're using a local contractor, but he's done work for us in the past. Well, that's great. He may have been charging you, way more than everybody else for everything in the past too. I said, what's the difference? He said, well, one thing is he wants to tarp the tank. And I said, well, yeah, tarping the tank's probably going to be anywhere from about $20,000 to $40,000 extra because of the amount of labor involved and the tarps and everything, that's involved with tarping a tank. But let me ask you, is there a house within 1,000 feet of the tank? No. Well, then what's going to get oversprayed? Is there any houses within 500 feet of the tank? No. Then what blast material is going to abrade somebody else's private property? What's the point in tarping the tank then, if you have no reason to tarp the tank? So no,
Right.
our bid didn't have a tarp in the tank because there was no reason to. And they were simply just trying to, add an additional line item. And so they had additional billing that they could have put on the client. And this happens quite often, to where there's somebody that can blast and paint and somebody that does blast and paint a tank. And that's really the difference. And so this recommendations page gives the leverage back to the client, so they know if they're getting overcharged for something, that even though they may have been using the same contractor for the last 20 years.
So to quickly summarize, the local guy doesn't think he has to be as competitive, and he's like, "Oh, I have this line item, I can charge for it," and they don't know any better. It's almost kind of like, or not saying they're playing it that shallow, but is that kind of what you're saying is happening? Like they're
Yeah,
unnecessarily doing work.
it is. And so let's think of it like this. The average cost for sandblasting, okay, is around $6 to $7 a square foot. That's what a normal sandblasting company charges. If I'm giving away somebody's livelihood right now, sorry, but that's what they usually charge. An average tank company, no matter if it's in the air or not, charges on an average 9 to $11 per square foot to blast and recoat with the macro epoxy, the epoxy coating that's going to be anywhere from 9 to 12 mils thick. All right, so that's 3 coats. That's 3 coats minimum. It's going to be a strike coat on all your weld seams. You're going to have a base coat, a top coat, and then if it's the outside, you're going to have a urethane top coat. So all of that included for anywhere from $2 to $4 more per square foot, you get the whole tank done, bare metal, all the way back to coating. To whereas a sandblasting guy in their business structure usually charges about $7 just to blast. So you can see why hiring a sandblasting company is going to run you more than a company that works on storage tanks, as a
Right.
main source of their service line.
Because they can do all of it in one mobilization, and they're highly specialized. Is that kind of what you're pushing for? Is that
Correct.
highly specialized group?
Yeah, those blasting guys that sandblast, they may not always work at heights or always work off the stages or the baskets, and so to them that's going to be a slower movement, of progress, and so they're going to be like, well, I'm taking longer at doing. I'm usually working on the ground, working around something, blasting something on a rack in a shop, something like that, right? I don't have to deal with weather days. I don't, have to know how to spray this type of coating. It just doesn't always work in their favor for those types of working conditions. But if a company's used to working on tanks, they know all the ins and outs. They know how to set up on a tank. They know how to work on the outside and the inside. They know the minimum number of personnel they needed to keep moving no matter what the weather conditions are. And so hiring that local contractor, they can't factor in all the things that usually go wrong with the tank, but a tank company knows exactly what they're about to run into. And so just like anything else, it's become competitive. And so they can't charge what a local contractor would. They know that they're going to go against Pittsburgh Tank and Tower, Suez
Right.
Utilities. They're going to go against these bigger companies that may do 150 tanks a year.
Wow, that just reminds me, that's very parallel to like a contractor that does just general civil work and a contractor that does wastewater treatment plants. Like we do 20 plants a year, and they are going to be just faster, cheaper, better than this just general civil guy. He's going to put some crazy bid, or it'll be I think you mentioned it too. It'll be some crazy low bid because they don't know what they're doing, and
Correct.
that's where you've got to. I've been on that side of the equation where you've got to come back and say, hey, okay, we know these guys aren't perfect. And there's going to be change orders. Is this worth the pain? Some people it is because of the cost savings potential, but I think
And
that's
you're
kind of
right
what you're
there, man.
alluding
The,
to.
the change orders, that's, a lot of the times, especially when we talk about rural systems, right? You're not dealing with groups of people that just sit there and read contracts and manage projects that are under contract all day, every day, weekly, monthly. Okay. So maybe they have 2 tanks or 1 tank in these rural systems. So maybe every 15 years they get the tank rehabbed, and the operator may have been there the last time, or it may be a new operator, right? So it's a new guy, he's working with a new project, and a lot of contractors rely heavily on change orders, and they know that's where they make all their money. And so they will low bid a project to get in there, and they'll expect you to write the contract or the proposal, the scope of work, and they'll wait for it to come to them, and they'll sign off on it knowing you didn't put all of this stuff in there, and they're just going to take you to the cleaners, you know.
That's so funny. I was doing a project for a small water system, and it was about $2 million of replacement. They had 6 miles of 4-inch pipeline that had to get replaced. The contractor bid it low, and then right after the bid was accepted, like within a week or two, he goes, "Hey, do you want to just go ahead and give me $250,000 for rock change orders? Because we're gonna have to dig rock out of these trenches." And I looked at the head engineer on that project at the time we talked. We're like, this guy's ridiculous, right? Like, we're not that dumb. Like, you can pull the rock out and we'll pay you per cubic yard. Like, but the owners were willing to like talk about it because they don't like you said, they don't deal with it normally.
Yeah. So we did a project. Well, you've worked with them. That small little company out in West Texas, that water, that multi-county water system. They got into a bind to where they were trying to do a dual CCM with the city surrounding them, and a large company came in. um, that manufactures gypsum, and that certain thing happened to where they were willing to sign a contract for all of these services to be done in order to be able to supply the water line straight up to them. And they wanted to rely heavily on their contracting company that they had always worked with instead of the water supply company coming in and extending their own line with their own contractor they knew wasn't going to do them wrong. The larger company that came in was like, no, we want to use our company because the line's going to be feeding our facility, so we'll go ahead and have them go all the way in and stop the connection right before your system, and then you can just do the tie-in. Well, that contractor tried to come back to the water system and say, hey, this it's going to cost you this much to tie in. And the amount that it was going to cost to tie in a 3-foot section and tee it into a pipe was about 25% of the entire line extension. And they were saying because all of these problems were involved with that part of the project of the tie-in. And it just makes you understand that these contractors know the systems are not set up to read contracts, to understand the contracts, and to fully design a program and a project from start to finish. They just deliver water to customers, and that's all they want to do. They want to make sure that the water's clean, the water stays on, and the system doesn't go down. Anything outside of that, they rely on people like you and me to make sure that they're getting the best for their money. They're getting the highest quality of work for the most reasonable price that they can because they're the ones that have to answer to their customers at the end connections and say this is where your money's going, right? And so they don't want to be taken advantage of one way or the other. They don't want to get cheap work, they don't want to get expensive work. They want to get the right priced work for the right quality of work to make sure that the system and the work and the project that you perform is going to last. And that's the biggest issue that I've seen in this industry is these rural systems just they're getting taken advantage of left and right. They don't know who they can
Well,
trust.
I was going to ask, and that's what I was going to ask next. So I like I think about like what you're talking about. We talk about specialization, and I think about who are their civil engineers on these projects. And part of my thought is these are not specialized groups. These are people that are doing commercial developments around the block, and they also happen to do your couple million gallon a day water facility as well because well that's just they're a civil engineer and they can do civil engineering. Do you think that someone needs to be a little more specialized in helping like just rural water systems, like this is the rural water guy in the state, you need to reach out to him kind of thing?
Absolutely. Okay, so whenever I talk to a client about a potential project or a tank or some altitude valves or any type of system modifications, and they say, "Well, we use this engineer," I say, "What give me the name of the engineer. I want to go look at their website. I want to look at how broad this engineer goes. Does he do everything from start to
Mm.
finish? Does he do every, industrial? Does he do, plants and build it, like you said, commercial? And what is his specialty? Does he offer water and wastewater? Because it comes down to some simple basic calculations in most parts, because they believe, hey, I can do all of this, I can do that. Problem is, if they can do all of this, they're thinking about all of this while they're trying to do that. They're not giving you the attention that you deserve. It may be a smaller project, but it's not small to you, right? And so one thing that comes along with our services is whenever we have a client, we tell that client, call me for anything. If you're ever thinking about a project, it's a free phone call. Just give me a call. Let's talk about it. Let's discuss what you have going
Right.
on in the future, and I'll point you in the best direction I can. If you need an engineer, I know an engineer. I know an engineer that does this. If you need a tank company and we're not available, I will actually refer somebody out to another tank company if we can't put their workload on our schedule, if they need it done within a certain amount of time. But what I will never do is say, hey, just go get somebody, go, any engineer can do it. That's incorrect. I want to look at somebody's website and find out that they do water and wastewater. Because if they do water and wastewater, they're not only going to do a great job at the engineering side of it, but they're going to do a great job at the planning side of it. And they're not just going to give a $5 million price tag on it. They're going to look for the way that's reasonable for this system. And hey, if this system only got $1.2 million and the engineering estimate's 1.5, the engineer that does water is going to find a way to put it in that 1.2. And they're going to make sure that they
Oh
pick
my gosh.
engineers that try not to go over that 1.2, that say, hey, yes, I can do it for that 1.2. I'm not going to get in there and find that $300,000 worth of change orders. That's our budget. We're going to work it out.
I just have a great story. I have a couple great stories about this specifically. Most recently, I had David Schneider on our show. He's a rural water sewer provider in Colorado, and that happened to him where it wasn't even, he got a bigger water wastewater firm, but they don't do these smaller systems. And so he got, because they weren't specialized, they got slammed with a project they couldn't build. And so then they get to the financial planning portion after the design's nearly done. And he's like, well, I can't build this. So this was just a waste of 250 grand of our grant that we just blew. The state's not giving us
Yep.
another one.
That happens, more times than not. That's exactly what happens. And it's it's upsetting to see and hear about, but it all goes back to these rural operators are just trying to stay in their lane. And all they can do is rely on finding somebody that has their best interest. And that's you know, we're in Houston, all right? You're in Denver. And when you talk to a person that's in a rural system, one of their biggest concerns is, well, you're in the city. What's this going to cost me? Is it going to cost me more because you're in the city? Are you a city boy? You know how many times I've been on the phone and somebody's like, oh, you're a city boy. Well, first off, I grew up in East Texas in a town of 512 people. I am farthest thing from a city boy. Yes, I wanted my kids to go to a good school district, but whenever I talk to a rural system, I know exactly the person that I'm talking to. It's everybody in my family. It's everybody I grew up with. And it was me until I went in the military. So I know that their biggest concern and their biggest strong suit, their biggest strength and weaknesses is both the same thing. It's loyalty, it's honesty, it's commitment. If they say something, they're going to do it. And all they ask is that
Mm.
you say something, you're going to do it. So whenever I speak to these people, I tell them, listen, I'm not going to bullshit you. I'm going to give you exactly the truth. I'm going to keep it strictly business. I'm going to tell you where you're right. I'm going to tell you where you're wrong. I'm going to tell you where you're good. I'm going to tell you where you're bad. And if you can't do something about it, let me know and I'll find a way to get it done for what you have. And that's most of these companies that come from big cities, they have this, big city overhead. They have these big city clients. And so they have big city budgets. And the bread and butter of our entire company is based off of rural water systems. It's 99.9% of all of our clients. We have a couple of big clients, but I mean, less than the fingers on my one hand are the clients that have over 5,000 connections. Okay. Like very few. San Antonio is like our biggest client ever. But everybody else is 5,000 or less connections. Most of them are less than 1,000 connections. And so when I talk to these rural systems, I understand that the two biggest concerns they have is honesty and funding. What can they do with what they have? And that's because we've designed our company around catering to rural systems. We never want for work, Mike. We never have a slow season. We never have a hole in our schedule because unlike all these other companies that don't care about these rural systems, they're the only system that we go after because we know that they have a lack of resources. They have nobody to turn to. And if they do, they have one person, usually their engineer. They say, we need this, take care of it. And the engineer's like, I don't do grants. Yeah, I don't really
Well, right,
know,
right.
you know.
Exactly. Because I just, someone says design it, they get, say, I need you to design this, do it. And then that's a lot of engineers. They don't think about the whole picture.
Yeah,
Not their fault either.
no, absolutely not. And it just that's who they think they have to go to. Well, this guy, he's the big brain of our, of our organization. So if anybody can figure it out, he can figure it out. And it's not like the engineer's like, no, they're like, yeah, I mean, I will, I don't, but I will, because I know you have nobody else to go to. And so, like I've talked about in future or previous conversations between you and I, it's just about making contact. Like, I don't care if I do work with any of the systems that I contact, but I care about getting my information to that system to where if they just need somebody to call, like I think we checked last time, 417 active clients is what we have. Okay.
Wow.
Between Colorado, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Texas. But we have a list of 4,300 and something contacts. And we hit those contacts at least once a week with an email marketing campaign, not to offer services, but to offer information. Hey, this is coming up. Information's been put out. This grant round is coming up. This is the new product they're using in this part of the industry. This is a new valve manufacturer that's got this, promotion going on for gate valves. Whatever it is, we try to push this information out to them to where they have these different streams of information coming in on these different sectors, to where they're just not limited to calling this one person saying, hey, can you do this for me? Because I don't know where to look. Maybe this one email reaches somebody that was just looking for something in that area and they didn't know where to look. And that's been one of the biggest responses we've gotten back from our email. Whenever somebody responds to our email, we were just thinking about doing this. Your timing's perfect. Just to give them the information that they were looking for. That's the biggest thing that I could hope for. And that's why we're in this business, because I know, like I said, they have a lack of resources. So if I can give them a library of resources, the work will always come. I just want to be there for them.
I love that. Something you had kind of spoken to me about before was the industry and the typical way of sharing information and how you're trying to kind of break that barrier. Can you kind of dive into that a little further?
Are you talking about like how they? What do you mean exactly on breaking that
Well,
barrier?
it's just like, I'll give you an example. It's like an engineering firm has a solution to your problem, but they don't share it with anyone, and which is kind of odd because then no one even knows that they have that solution. And you're kind of talking about, hey, I have this information about stuff coming out, and you're just putting it out there, just like, hey, trying to send it directly to them. Hey, this is coming up. This is the new way of doing a gate valve. Like, here's a new valve that's maybe $1,000 cheaper. What causes that? I don't know. It seems sometimes like a
Sure.
lack of transparency, or is it
So
who's responsible?
So as an engineering firm, as most of these systems deal directly with an engineer to start off with on any project, you're bound by these ethical clauses. Okay. One of these ethical clauses is that you can't market your services with a cost attached to it. All right. You can't send somebody and say, hey, I'll do this work for X amount before you even know that they're interested in the work being done, before they've contacted you or, or said, hey, you've seen this bid and it's an open-ended bid or whatever it is. You can't attach a dollar amount to a service that you're offering. I don't have those same stipulations as just a regular service company. I can put out once a year, we do a 50% off on all of our inspections. So our inspections run right around $900. So once a year, we'll give a 50% discount on all of our inspections. It's usually our biggest promotion a year, and we'll send out an email, the same email every day for a solid week, because we know that 30% of those emails go to junk, 30% of those emails get deleted without opening them, and 30% of those get opened and maybe 5% of them get a response, right? So if we hit every week, we're just increasing our chances. But in that situation, I learned a long time ago that one, price is never the issue. It's if they see the value in what you're offering. Okay. So if I can tell somebody, and I'll be honest with you, Mike, inspections is just our foot in the door. Okay. I don't care. I care less if I can do an inspection for you. I care more about giving you information than I do care about giving the inspection to you. But I know that an inspection report is required by every state, just depends on the requirement cycle. All right. So if I call you or I email you and I offer you this inspection, I know that you have to have it. So I'm not offering you a service out of nowhere that you know 8 other companies are offering you, and we're just hoping to try to gain that business. If 8 other companies are offering you the same inspection, it's because you're required to get the inspection. I'm just offering you the best inspection, so I'm going to keep hounding you until I get the inspection because I'm giving you information that nobody else is giving you. But when you get back to giving the information out to these people at no cost, no obligation, no commitment, to where most companies don't, it's because most companies are afraid of competition, right? In your field, there's probably, I have no idea, but let's just say there's 20,000 engineering companies in the country. Okay. Most engineers are only bound to a state line by an application within that other state. You can get work in any state you want to by filing an application. Once you've already got your PE, it usually transfers to any state. Now, I could be wrong about a couple of states, but I'm pretty sure that you could go and get licensed in that state. So you have 20,000 companies that potentially are fighting for all of the states, and all 20,000 are in competition with each other. So the least amount of information you give away that allows you to be the lowest bidder, it ensures you more work. Because if you're all in competition, but I can charge less than you, but I don't tell you how I'm doing it, well, then I'm still in the running. Well, when you're looking at rural systems, the worst thing that a rural system wants is secrecy. Okay?
Yeah.
These are homegrown people. I told you I grew up in a town of 512 people. A handshake means something to these people. All right. So if I go in guns blazing, not with aggressive sales tactics, but I go in gun blazing with information, and I download you with every answer to every question you have, and I give you as many articles of information as I can, I guarantee you I have just created a level of trust that no other company that you've ever talked to will ever do or has ever done. So when I go and I give a quote, and I do this because there's certain instances in certain states to where our tank rehab will fall below a threshold that they have to go out for bid. Okay. And if we do some work for them, they're like, yeah, well, I need to go and get 2 other bids on the work. I will say, you know what? Not a problem. I'm going to send you over my proposal, and I'm going to send you over 2 contacts of other companies that I know that I've bid against, and I'm going to put that in there for you, and that way you can contact them directly. And here's the inspection report that we use. Send it to them. They'll be able to use that to give you a quote. Am I going to get, and I've lost more work, Mike, than I've won doing this. Okay.
Yeah.
But I have just, yeah, they may not use me for that rehab, but I guarantee you the next time that tank goes up for rehab, I'm going to get an email. The next time I need that tank cleaned or inspected, I'm going to get an email, because I just made their job easier, and I just showed that I have nothing to hide. All right. I'm giving you 2 other people that I've bid against directly that I may have won or may have lost, but they're going to give you a quote that's going to be comparable to mine. It's going to be a different quote than you've received, and you'll see exactly that I'm not hiding anything from you. Information is key to trust. And companies that do not give the information out, they always want to know what are they hiding? What are they going to do to me once they get the contract?
That's so interesting. I love that. What are they going to do with me? I had a recent developer I was chatting with, and they got all the way to the end of the project. The engineer's like, we need like 10,000 yards to make this drainage plan work. And it was like $250,000 for you to finally tell that to me? Like, you didn't know that when you just, I don't know, put some contours on the site and you had that. It's just, they're like, oh, and then the guy's like, oh, we need a change order now to do a stormwater pond because what we designed didn't work anymore, and now we got to pump the water. And it's like, well, man, I mean, we didn't want to talk about that before you spent all the time to give me an unfavorable answer. Like,
I'll tell you, one of the things that has really helped us grow as a company is the normal practice for a company is say, hey, can you come do this for me? Yeah, sure. What are you going to charge me? Here's what I'm going to charge you. Okay, come do this. Hey, while you're here, can you do this? Yeah, sure. What's that going to run me? That's going to run you this. Okay. Hey, would you mind? That's something small. Would you mind doing that while you're here as well? Yeah, sure. What's that going to run me? It's going to run you this. Okay. That's the normal way of doing business. All right. We have, I would say, north of 70% of all of our clients have been with us for more than 7 years. Okay. We've seen massive growth in this last 2 year period of bringing on more customers per year, but the retention of all of our customers is we have a longevity in our clients, and this is why. From the start, I have never tried to charge anybody for an additional service if I'm already on site. If I can do something for you that costs me 5 to 15 minutes, 30 minutes extra of time, I'm not charging you for that 30 minutes. And this is what I mean. If I'm on site cleaning a tank and they're like, "Hey, can you go ahead and change the mesh out on our air vent?" Sure, I can. I've got two guys that are standing around while one guy's cleaning the inside of the tank. Why would I charge you when I'm already paying for those guys to stand there? Might as
Yeah.
well pay for them to do something, while I'm already getting, it's not costing me anymore. They're already standing there. Hey, can you put on some fall protection to our ladder? Sure. If you don't mind paying for the fall protection kit, I'm not going to charge you for the labor to put it on. Again, they're standing there. If I'm doing an inspection for you, an inspection takes on average 2 hours per tank. If they're like, "Hey, can you put on some new confined space labels for us?" Of course I can. We've got him in the truck. He's already there. You need a new hatch gasket? No problem. I'm going to put the hatch gasket on there because it's an AWWA requirement. It doesn't cost me anything if I'm already on site to give you extra
Mm,
value. But I guarantee you I'm going to get that inspection again. Okay, can I turn that one inspection,
dude.
that one trip into a 5 year contract to where I know that I'm going to get another inspection out of it? If it takes me a hatch gasket and some confined space labels to build a trust relationship with you to get work in the future, you bet I'm going to give that to you. And I'm not even thinking about charging you for that. I'm thinking about, again, how can I add value without
Oh,
adding cost?
I love that. I shared this happened today. I had someone was coming out and getting my sprinklers ready, and some of them were broken, and they just went and fixed it, charged me for the parts, and like told me afterwards, and I was like, oh man, that was so nice. Like
Right?
this, they're out there just fixing stuff that I'm not even thinking about. I'm like, wow, it's just amazing when you receive that level. I'm like, well, they're definitely doing the next four for me. Like,
Exactly. That response right there. That's what we want. We never want somebody to call us back and be like, "Why'd you charge me $35 for a confined space label?" Well, I mean, the confined space labels cost $24 and took us, 5 minutes, so it's a $10 minimum charge. Like that conversation,
yeah,
that would make me just, I would feel it in my
uneasy.
stomach. You know what I'm saying? Like, why can't I just put a confined space label on there and just, you know what I get? I get like, "Hey, I gave you a free confined space label. You saw it in the inspection report. You called me back and you were like, 'Thank you for the labels.' I just got you to call me or email me or
Right.
message me. So now I've created a relationship to where you've made contact with me, and now we have an open line of communication because of something I did for you. So instead of me calling you, I've just made it to where you called me, even for just a small thank you of appreciation. And now that you've called me, it's already in your mind to where I'm going to call you next time when I need
Yep.
something. And that's one less sales call that I have to give them, and one less sales call they have to receive where somebody's trying to push something on them.
I
I'm
love
not
it.
saying we're not going to still send them emails, but I don't have to sell that person anymore. They know that I'm not there to charge them for something that they didn't need or wasn't required. So it comes back to trust. Right. That's what our whole company is about, is trust. If I know exactly the people that I'm working for and working with, and I'm not going to treat them like they're down the street here in Houston and it's all just a numbers game and they've got an unlimited budget, because I know they don't. I know that $1,000 inspection is going to go for board approval for most of these systems. And even then,
Yep.
they may have to push it out 60 to 90 days and plan for it. I know exactly who my clientele is, and that's who I want to keep. I don't want the big systems.
I love it. So one of the things that you had mentioned was navigating the grant loan systems in the different states, and you working through those hurdles of helping out the different communities. What have you learned along the way? What what do they need to know about those things? Because it's pretty daunting. You bring up those words, and they're just like, oh my, I don't even like. I'm gonna have to pay someone $25,000 to even look at this.
Yeah. So, anybody watching this is going to know that the biggest hurdle that any system ever has to overcome for any type of maintenance, upkeep, expansion is going to be the funding cycle. Getting funding is it seems astronomical for most of these systems because if they don't have it, most of them understand, yes, there's grants out there. But if it's free money, it's got to be really hard to get. Otherwise, I can just go to the bank and get a loan. But maybe our system doesn't make enough revenue to sustain a loan payment. All right. So grants seem to be the go-to for most of these systems. It's most of these systems need and require and rely on grants, but they do not know how to get the grant. Again, it's free money. It's got to be extremely hard to do. The problem is it is extremely hard to do. There's a lot involved with getting a grant. I mean, you're talking 50, 60, 75 page submissions with a grant package. You're talking about these beautifully articulated stories about what this system is comprised of, what the system's history is, who the system provides to, exactly why you need this project, what is involved in this project, what are the costs associated with this project, how is this project going to sustain the system, how is it going to increase the financial responsibility of the system. And all of these things are included in grants. And so not only are they like, man, there's a lot involved with the grant, they're also like, I don't even know where to look for a grant. The great thing about it is there is so much money out there for these rural and disadvantaged systems that it's almost stupid. Okay, like the government has allotted billions of dollars for rural and disadvantaged systems. The reason there's still billions of dollars left is because they don't know where to go to get them, the loans or the grants. And you have two types of grants. You can get a straight 100% grant, or you can get, X amount of principal forgiveness, which is basically still a grant. And so in that situation, for most of the rural systems, I would always say, hey, you want to start off with your rural water associations, either the National Rural Water Association or your state rural water association, because they give out a lot of grants based on the grants that they receive. So it's a second tier grant. Rural Water Association will apply for, hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. They'll get it, and then they get to sub out portions of that grant to these individual water systems. One piece of advice I would give for all these rural water systems is if you submit a grant application, majority of the time you're always going to get it. It may not be this cycle, may not be next cycle. It may be 3 cycles away before that grant ever gets awarded to you, but you will get approved for that grant and you will be put in a long line of individuals that are going to get awarded those grants prior to you. But it's all about getting that package submitted. And you're right. If you want a grant, you're going to call your engineer and say, hey, we need to apply for this grant. And your engineer is going to do what anybody else out there can do, which is find somebody that does grant work, hire that person if you can afford them. Okay, so you need to have, you need to have, like you said, $10,000 to $25,000, depending on the size of the project, to pay this grant writer to submit the grant, because you cannot pay a grant writer a fee based off of a project sum. And what I mean is the grant writer can't get a percentage of the project for doing the grant. They can't. That's illegal. They have to either work on a set price or an hourly rate, which if anybody's ever written a grant before, they know that there's a lot of rebuttals. There's a lot of addendums that got put in. Hey, the grant, whoever you're submitting the grant to, the EPA, USDA, Rural Water Association, they're going to say, well, we need this amount of information. All right, I give it to them. Well, we need clarification on this. All right, I give it to them. Well, we still need clarification because it wasn't clarified enough. right? Now you're kind of working off of how efficient is your grant writer and how many repetitions of
Oh,
submittals are they looking to get? Because they know I could submit this, but leave out maybe just this little bit of information and get another 7 to 10, 15 hours on the resubmission of that one answer. All right. And if you get a grant association that you're submitting to, they don't always come back with your full grant review and say, this is all the information I need. Maybe they need clarification on this before they can move to section number 2. Right. So maybe your grant writers can't answer all the questions in one setting. They can only answer this amount. And once they get past this phase, then they can answer this amount. Maybe they got to go back to the engineer for this amount of information before they can even move on to the second phase. So finding a grant writer is like finding a good engineer. You're going to go through trial and error. And if you got one tank or two tanks and you've only done one grant every 20 years, chances are you're probably not working with the same grant writer. So one thing that we've done is we started a subsidiary company called New Water Funding. And what it does is it targets just water utilities. Okay, so we know exactly what they're looking for when we submit a grant. Our grant writers know exactly what they're coming up to. And what we do is we set either a flat rate or an hourly charge, but we do so with a back end payout to where we assume all the risk because, again, we know, and we should, as a company that deals with water utilities, we know what the grant is consistent of and what they're going to ask you for. And if they come back 18 times and say, I need clarification on this, that is not your fault. That is our fault because we know what we were supposed to submit. And if we get that many repetitions of resubmittals, that's obviously something on our company and not the client because we should have known what answers to ask you based on the grant application. It gives you all the information you need. So if I submit a grant and I say, I'm submitting this grant based on what the grant's requesting, and they come back that many times, I obviously left information out on to benefit me somehow financially. So what our company does is we submit the grants and we get paid on the back end. And if you get denied for the grant, we understand we are assuming the loss on submitting that grant. We're not going to charge you and say, hey, well, you got denied, so you still have to pay us this note. It's all contingent on the grant getting approved. You need a grant, we may tell you, hey, if you get a grant, and we've used this before, if you get a grant, we would like an additional 5 to 10 points in the evaluation process when you receive the bid submittals for that project. Give us 5 to 10, and this is completely legitimate. Give us 5 to 10 points in the experience section of that bid proposal for us doing the grant. So yes, we will do the grant for less, but we still get paid on the back end. But if we're going to get awarded that work, it's going to, and it's an point-based evaluation on our bid proposal, then we get 5 to 10 points extra that no other company is getting because of the expertise and experience that we're putting into grant to finished product. So it only gets like those points only get reviewed and accepted if we're still in the running. If we're $30,000 above somebody else, that 5 to 10 points isn't probably going to put us in the running for the final selection process of that project. But if we're neck and neck with somebody else and we started the project start to absolute finish of the final product, then yeah, that 5 to 10 points in the experience category should go towards our company. And we should get the award for that project. And that's done us work in the past as well. We've gotten awards based on that. So grants, financial opportunities are always going to be the biggest hurdle that any system's going to come up against. And it shouldn't be the rural water's sole responsibility to find, understand, and submit a grant package. Again, it's not their lane. It's not what they want to do. And it all comes back to trust. They need somebody they can trust to do them right and to make sure that the price note matches the quality of work and the life expectancy of the project.
I love it. I love that you're wanting to have some skin in the game too, because I think that builds a huge level of trust. Is look, if you're not winning, I'm not winning, and you're a team player. And I think a lot of bigger groups won't that they don't want to do that. They're like, why do I have to do that? I'm getting people are handing me work. You're like, you know what? I want to help you. I'll take the L with you, or we're gonna win together. Like, it's
Yeah,
great.
you got startup companies that will take any project and they'll underbid it because they need the work so they don't starve. And then you got large corporations that pick and choose what projects they want that have the higher profit margins for the least amount of work, right? Because they've built up those reserves, so they're not hurting for work, and they can pass on as many projects as they want to until they get the perfect in their zone project to where maybe I've got a 30% profit margin or a 35% profit margin or a 40%. They know exactly what projects they want. And then you got that bottom guy that's just like, man, I'll take a 5% project profit margin if I can just get some work going so I can keep my guys employed. Well, what if you had a company that was like, I don't know, crazy idea, like right in the middle, that wasn't necessarily in it for the profit margin, but was in it for the longevity? I need to keep my guys going, but I don't need the work bad enough to where I can like just take any project. But I'm not going to let any project go because I'm not doing it for the profit. I'm doing it for the contract. I'm doing it for the client relationship. If I can give you a reasonable price and give you an exceptional product, then I don't have to worry about you coming back to me in the future. You're going to come back to me. I'm going to at least get an opportunity to work with you again. I
Right.
may not win it, but it's one less call I have to make. And the more clients I can get and treat right, I may not be the fastest growing company, but I guarantee you in the sector that I am, I'll be the longest running company.
Oh, I love it. The infinite game. It is an infinite game, though, and I think understanding that to continue playing that game and is to provide value. Like that is how you keep playing. If you're not providing value, you'll dry out. Or if you're always just like, how can I squeeze as much out of this stone as possible?
Yeah.
It's a
You look at the
short-sighted
five
thing.
states that we're in, I guarantee if you look at the 5 states and you call any water supply, even if we've done work with them or not, and you ask them about our name, they've heard about us, right? Because we are very big on marketing. We just want to get our name out there so we can keep pushing the information. If you look at any of those 5 states and ask them who they believe the biggest company is that provides the services that we provide, that will not be our company. Okay. Because most of these systems have to reach out to a bigger company. Pittsburgh Tank and Tower is the largest tank construction, erector, maintenance provider company in the country. They're the biggest. Suez is right behind them, but Suez does all utility work. Okay. But every system in these states, to the smallest system, will not know these names. They will not know Pittsburgh Tank and Tower. They will
Oh,
not know Suez.
right.
Even though they're the largest companies, they are not the best known at the smaller end of the spectrum on these systems.
Yeah.
And nobody is marketing to these 300, 450 connection systems. These bigger companies do not care about those systems. And the amount of systems that have 500 connections or less are in the thousands. They're in the thousands, Mike. And nobody is calling these systems. They're waiting for the call from these systems. So what does that give us? That gives us a massive opportunity, right?
Right. To
There
jump
are
out
more
ahead of the game.
systems in small connection counts than there are systems in big connection counts. So I actually have a larger client base on the small end of the spectrum than these larger companies do on the higher end of the
Mm,
spectrum. They get higher contract amounts, but they have less clients. And so if they lose a client, it's a massive hit to their bottom line. If I lose a client, it's not really that big of a hit other than I lost the relationship.
right.
So,
Oh, I love that.
there's not enough marketing and there's not enough resources being given to these small communities. And it just opens up an array of opportunity for our company to be that company that not only provides the services, but just provides the phone call. Hey man, hey, and I get calls probably at least twice a week. I'm doing this project. I got this company out here. They're doing this. What do you think about it? You know, I get calls about somebody else doing work, and they want to know because they don't believe that it's the right way to do something, or they believe something's too expensive on a change order, or they don't believe it's needed, and they're going off my inspection report and like, hey, you said this, but you said I had 5 to 7 years, and they're wanting to do it now. You know, what do you think?
Right.
We just sit there and talk. Because like I said, it's all about the connection. And as long as I can keep the connection alive, the money will always come. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about somebody not getting taken advantage of. Like I said, I grew up in a small town, and that's the one thing, man. A handshake means the world. If you shake somebody's hand, you're going to expect a call back. All right. But
Love it.
it's
Yeah.
just how it is.
It's phenomenal, right? And it's great coming from that mindset, because I don't think a lot of people understand the personality of a rural citizen. It's like you're saying, it's a different game. Every single person that lives in your district, or whatever, water
Yeah.
supply, all of them. Which house has like some crappy sediment water, which one's the Airbnb, and the guy that's lived there since the whole town was built. Like,
You go to a board meeting and in one of these rural systems, and I swear, if they're talking about the system, you're going to hear somebody say something like, well, Mary that lives down there off of Walnut Avenue, right past the Red Barn, she was saying that this was happening with her water. And then Johnny over off of Appleseed Street was talking about how he's got a ring in his toilet ever since we did this project back at the water plant. They just, like you said, they know everybody there. And a lot of the times, the board members and the water operators are collateral, right? You'll be talking to them on the phone. Hey, I just got your inspection report, and you can hear that they're on a tractor out in the field somewhere farming, and they're talking about their water system. It's not always their full-time job, because a lot of these water systems can't sustain a full-time individual to be there 8 hours a day,
ooh,
5 days a week, because the system doesn't make that much money. So they've got a secondary job, and they do it for just a small fee. Maybe the cost of your inspection is their monthly income for being the operator of that system. We're talking small systems, Mike. All they need is somebody to make sure that they're not screwing them over, and that they have the system's best interest in mind, because that's their community. We live in a subdivision that has probably more houses. I know that the subdivision I live in has more connections than 99% of my systems, individually. And just the section of the suburb that I live in.
that's so funny. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I never even thought of it like that. You're like, I could, in a probably 10-minute walk, touch more connections, houses, front doors than one of these systems.
Yeah. I was looking, we have small systems as well. We have 6 small systems that equal about 400 and something connections. And I was doing the math on the section of this neighborhood that I live in. We have a little over 3,000 houses, and our average water bills, $40 to $60 or something like that a month. The system that I'm connected into my primary residence makes more in 1 month in revenue than all 6 of my water systems do annually put together.
Oh my
All right.
gosh.
That's that's the spectrum of what is the usual average rural system versus, and we're just the mud of Houston. We're not, the city of Houston supplies water to all these muds, and just this one mud in this one section of the neighborhood that I live in has 3,000 houses, makes over $200,000 a month in revenue.
Holy crap.
And
Yeah.
and my systems together don't make that in a year. So somebody's got, and I all these 6 systems that I got from different individuals. The system wasn't making enough on its own to sustain its own system, and so they were failing. And the state was like, we need somebody to step in and take care of these systems. And so as a businessman, I was like, well, individually They don't sustain themselves, but our company can sustain them until we can grow that
Right.
that group. And as a system of 6 different systems, now they're all self-sustaining themselves, leaning off of themselves under one company. So now everybody has, quality water. Now the water doesn't go off for days at a time because of a leak and nobody has the funds to fix it. We took over a system where the residents were fixing their own leaks because the water operator was like, screw it, and left. And it
Yeah,
just
because
sat
he
there.
ain't getting paid.
Yeah, he ain't getting paid. Nobody's paying their bills. He's like, and they told me, they were like, yeah, well, the guy that had it before you was like, we were always talking about the water. And he was like, yeah, you don't like the quality, go get yourself a well. I was like,
Oh
that's,
my
you can't tell
God.
that to people that can't afford a well. So it really is. There's, people think that, all systems should be able to self-sustain, and a system with 50 connections, they're paying $50 a month. That doesn't pay the power and chemical bill. You have one leak and you're over budget. An average leak
Right.
costs about $500 to fix just in parts. You're not talking about, and if you hire a company out there to come out there and fix it, it's a minimum of $1,000 a day to come out there with an excavator and 2 guys. So it's just not cost efficient sometimes for these small systems to operate. And so whatever you can do to benefit the system, that's a win in my book. It doesn't necessarily have to be a payable invoice, but man, like some of these systems just need help. They
Yeah.
just need somebody to talk to. Hey, I'll do it. Just tell me what to do. Tell me how I can fix it.
Yeah. They don't know. I love it. Yeah, they just really they don't know because they don't you see, I don't know, hundreds a year. I'm just gonna throw a number. You're seeing hundreds of them and you hear the same problems. They hit someone up like you're like, oh, I've heard that one before. You should probably check here. Like they don't
Yeah,
have someone like that to talk to.
agreed. Usually it's that one guy, and he's like, man, if I don't know it, who does? And just to be able to be that phone call, that
Love it.
that you know I told you I coach little league. I do training courses for divers and water operators, and just something about teaching and coaching that just, I mean, that just satisfies me more than any other aspect of this company that I could ever think or dream of. There's no better feeling that I get from answering somebody's call and just being able to answer that question. And if I don't, I'll be like, I know somebody that can. I will find you an answer and I'll get back to you. They may not have a library of resources, but I do. And I can call somebody that I've given work to in the past or done work for me. And I can be like, hey, I've got this situation. What's the best course of action on something I may not know? And then I can give that information to that guy. And that way they still get the answer they need. And it doesn't cost them anything for a consultation. No, you call, I'm not saying you, Mike, but there's other engineering firms out there. If you call, they're like an attorney firm. They're writing down in their book 15-minute conversation on this client account, and that's billable, and it's just, it doesn't always have to be that way. Sometimes just being that shoulder, man, that ear, that phone call. That's I tell my sales guys this: listen, every system that you make contact with is going to be anywhere from 500 to $1 million over the 20 to 25-year lifespan. If you treat them right, every phone call you pick up and talk to a system will be on average 500 to $1 million within less than 30 years. The amount of projects that a water system has to go through is substantial. You're going to get your tanks rehabbed. You're going to do line extensions. You're going to do meter replacements. You're going to do treatment and filtration facilities. You're going to do well regeneration. They're going to need the work. It depends on what type of relationship you build with them. If you're the company they call
Mm.
back for that work, or if it's somebody else. So stop worrying about trying to make the sell on this 5-minute phone call and make the relationship. And I guarantee the commission you'll make off of $1 million over the next however many years you're with this company. It could be in 1 year, it could be in that 25. It depends on when the project comes up. But if you make the relationship now, you're going to be there for that commission. So stop trying to sell everybody you talk to.
Oh, I love it. Oh, that gives me goosebumps. I love that's so I just so resonate with that. So we've run over a little bit here.
Oh, man.
Where do people, how, where does someone reach out to you, find you?
And you can go to our website, Newater Enterprises with an S on it.com. Um, and we have a contact form there. Just fill out any kind of questions you have or information you need. Like I said, if you have a question or you're requesting information on something, just shoot us an email. We'll get you an answer. No strings attached. If you want to call me, our number's on there. My direct number is the actual number that's on the website. Okay, so it will ring my office phone. Every call that comes into this company, my office phone rings. Now, if somebody else picks it up, then they'll get the call. And if you ask for me, it'll go to they'll get me on the phone if I'm in the office. If I'm on the phone and I don't answer it, then somebody else will pick up or it'll go to voicemail and you'll always get a phone call back. So you'll never call and not get a return call or get somebody on the phone. But if you send me an email or a phone call, I'll answer any questions you have. I'll research and spend my time to get you information on whatever it is you need. And if we're not the company that you want to use, hey man, it happens. There's somebody out there that's going to underbid me. I promise you, it happens all the time. $100, $1,000, $10,000. It really just depends on if it's more cost efficient for me to do the job or not. But I'll tell you, and let me end on this, Mike. I had a guy from Austin, an
Okay.
engineer, that said, I need a bid to clean out a tank in Fort Myers, Florida. And I wrote him back and I was like, we're in Texas. You understand that, right? And he was like, yeah, send me a bid. And I was like, you understand it's going to be like 3 times the mobilization cost just for me to drive to Florida to do this. How about I contact a local company down there that provides these services and set you up with a meeting and an email to where y'all can communicate. I'll do all the work. I'll find a company for you and I'll set you up. And he was like, no, thank you. Just send me the formal quote so we can get going. The cost wasn't the issue. For some reason, they wanted to work with our company no matter what I was going to offer to save them money on. The reputation that our company, and that's what it came back down to. Is like your reputation is excellent. The way you take care of your clients, we've just heard that you'll just take care of your clients. You don't nickel and dime. You'll do extra things just to make sure the job is done properly. And so just having the reputation that we have landed us a job that was way overpaid. Just because they wanted us to do the mobilization 36-hour round trip to Fort Myers, Florida from Houston to do the project. So, we are absolutely in it for the client relationship, not in it for the billables at the end of the month. And so if you have any questions at all, you want any information, you want another company in your area because you don't believe I'm going to be, the lowest bidder, or you get my quote and you're like, man, that's out of our budget. Do you have anybody closer that can give me a lower bid? Absolutely, I'm going to give you the information. So reach out to us. I'll be more than happy to help.
All right. Wow. That's a great way. That's a great story to end with. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time to share all your experiences and your expertise and just what it means to build a great relationship. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate you having me. I had a blast here, man.
All right. Awesome. Well, we'll chat later. All right. That's it for today. Chris, we'll chat another time.
Take it easy, Mike.